What's up, everyone? We're going to do a basic video on leasing. So we're actually going to do a few videos on how leasing works. Today we're just going to talk about how the mechanism of leasing works in terms of the numbers. So, because there's a lot of misconceptions, and we've discovered through our many years as a car dealer that a lot of clients come in misinformed, or they have a lot of questions, or they don't understand the concept of leasing, and often, unfortunately, it's due to a salesperson in another dealership really not understanding the principles of leasing. So leasing it's a pretty simple idea. Of course, the manufacturers like it when you change vehicles often. So for anybody looking who enjoys changing vehicles every 2 to 5 years, leasing becomes a really interesting option for any type of client that likes to do that. So how leasing works is you have a MSRP. So that's the price in the sticker. On the sticker of the vehicle, and then you have a sales price, all right, and then you have a residual value, or perhaps a buyback. Some manufacturers might call it a buyback. So how it works is, let's say we have a sales price of $40,000 and a residual value of $25,000. Buyback at the end of the term. How they price the payment of that lease, it'll be the spread between the sales price and the residual value. So in this case, it'll be $15,000 right here. 40,000 minus 25,000 equals 15,000. Now if you divide that by 36 months, for example, if it's a term of 36 months, a 3-year lease, it'll be about $416 a month. 15,000 divided by 36, it's $416 plus change. That will be plus taxes. And this is assuming it's at 0% interest. Now your interest is always calculated on your sales price. This is a common misconception that a lot of salespeople mislead clients. Most customers come in believing that you're paying the interest rate just on the use of the vehicle, the $15,000. The manufacturers aren't lending you $15,000 on 3 years. They're not lending you a percentage of a vehicle, in this case 45% of the value of the vehicle. They're lending you 100% of the vehicles for those 3 years. So you do have to pay interest on the entire $40,000, and that makes perfectly good sense. If you were to lend a $40,000 vehicle or house to a person, and that person said, well, I'm only going to borrow for 3 years, so just give me the interest on that term. He said, no, because I have to borrow the whole amount to lend out my house. I can't go to the bank and just borrow part of the value of my home to lend it to you. I have to pay for the whole amount and pay interest on the whole amount. It's the same idea with the car. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about today is how they determine the residual value. Residual value is often counted by an insurance company that works for the manufacturer, or the manufacturer hires, and they determine the buyback value after the term. So usually companies will offer you 2, 3, 4, or 5 years lease terms, and then once in a while they'll get inventive and do a 39-month term or a 42-month term, or so 3 years and 3 months, or perhaps 3.5 years. There's now many new terms that manufacturers are giving to clients, but here we're just going with a standard 36 month just to keep it simple. So the residual value is often determined as a percentage of MSRP. So your MSRP here, let's say, was $45,000. There was a $5,000 rebate to get to that $40,000 sale price. Your MSRP determines your residual value. How it does that is it's a percentage of the MSRP. In this case, it's a little over 55%. I think it's 55.5. For argument's sake, let's just keep it at 55%. So MSRP of 45, if you do 0.55 times 45,000, you get $25,000. If the sales price goes up, let's say to 42 or down to 38, the residual value will never change. The residual value does not change as a consequence of sale price. The only time the residual value changes is as a consequence of the kilometers you choose. So the more kilometers you add that you need to your lease per year, the lower the residual value will be, and the higher the spread between the residual value and the sales price. So for example, if you do more kilometers, let's say you do 30,000 kilometers a year versus maybe this lease, this residual value was based on 20,000 kilometers a year, then perhaps the manufacturer will say, okay, well at 30,000 kilometers a year, your new residual value is $20,000, and now your spread will be $20,000 instead of $15,000, adding an extra $5,000 in residual value to the spread. Easy. It's a pretty simple reason why that is. Of course, a vehicle that has more kilometers is worth less when you bring it back. So this is our first step of explaining a lease. So these are the basic mechanics of leasing. I think a lot of salespeople don't explain this very well, and it's a worthwhile tool to use for anybody who enjoys changing vehicles every 2 to 5 years. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time.